I got involved in energy because I think we're in a really exciting phase. We're in a transition phase right now. I'm not at all doom and gloom about the future of the energy sector globally. I think we're about to transition into a world which is mainly powered by decentralized renewables, and I think in particular solar power plays a big part in that. And I think we're moving into a world where we're going to have electric vehicles connected into everyone's homes that could provide some sort of buffering service to the grid. So actually we could be moving towards a more efficient usage of a grid, which actually lowers costs for consumers. And I think we're moving into a world where, with the rollout of with smart meters, a more data-driven energy sector, which can only, once it's properly harnessed, and open data plays a big part in this, can really start to do things a lot more sensibly. There's a lot of things which are done because it makes sense without having lots of data or open data, and costs are duplicated all over the place. And by having to get more systems thinking, data-driven systems thinking, we could be cutting down costs all over the place, as well as moving towards a decarbonised, resilient, decentralised energy sector. So I think there's lots of opportunity, and if I'm honest, there needs to be a kind of as time goes forward in the next 10 years, there needs to be a radical rethink on the way the systems are right now. We can't just carry on as we are. In the southwest region in the UK at the moment, quite recently, they've announced that they cannot connect any more small-scale renewables to the grid because it's just congested. They've got, Cornwall in particular has been one of the leaders in adoption of wind and solar, but now they can't add any more because the grid is at its capacity for dealing with the backflow of energy. And we need to start doing things more efficiently. The key things here are putting in more energy storage, distributing energy storage throughout the grid. There is having smarter connections between the generation of energy and the consumption of energy. And there's some key things in that area which open data could play a good part. For example, if something's windy, in a windy day, a factory can shift its demand a little bit to basically match off that excess generation. These are sort of things that would actually start to make better use of the grid and allow more renewables to be put onto the grid, and obviously to reach our decarbonisation targets. That's kind of important. You cannot, for example, as a consumer based in Cornwall, buy from Cornish generators. You can't, as a supporter of onshore wind, pay a premium to buy from onshore wind to encourage that industry. If you choose to pay a premium, that is, to encourage that industry and show you basically vote for onshore wind. You cannot buy from community energy groups or within your locality. You cannot buy from innovative technologies, for example, new tidal turbine designs. There's no level of choice out there at the moment, and that is the kernel of what we're trying to tackle with Open Utility, at least, is giving that level of choice. So I guess that's one of the key things about open data in the energy sector at the moment is it's a struggle for a lot of the incumbent players to even understand what it is, because they're almost the fires that they're fighting are almost one layer before that, about okay, we need to get data first. We need smart meters. We need to be able to handle having lots of data. And I guess the value add around having open data isn't even in their brainwaves at the moment, I don't think. I think the key is getting all the data in a similar format, a machine readable similar standardized format which can be open or closed, and it's not two different types of data sets, but one data set, and it's just a flip of a switch that you can turn it open or closed. And I think that's the key. And giving, making sure that the standardized format meets all the requirements of security concerns in the energy sector, but allows seamless integration with people who want to add value to it.
Mm-hmm. I imagine that there is a public authority able to grant or deny access to energy data. And let's imagine now that a third party exists. So it's made of people like you, developers, software developers, data scientists, and energy engineers that create a new impetus in the energy sector for innovation. Let's imagine this happens, in 5, 10,
it's going to
10
happen.
years. It's going to happen, yeah.
Positive,
so,
yeah.
Let's say this is going to happen. How would you like the energy sector to change should that package of data be made available?
So I think the key thing is it's not just about the role of what we call suppliers, the entities which currently buy and sell energy on your behalf, or the buying and selling element. I think it's also about the grid infrastructure, because if you look at a bill now, the cost breakdown, a large amount of that is going to is the cost of transporting that energy to your home. And I think that's where having this standardized format, which can be open or closed, would have a lot of value. So you start to connect your ability to buy energy on this sort of standardized format. So you could be, choosing to buy different units from different sources, but then you could be connecting in the same format your energy storage device, which will ramp up and down depending on whether the grid needs some support or not, or whether there's, in Cornwall there's too much wind and the grid needs you to use more energy. And the key value, I think, there is having this one format and giving everyone who needs access to that to make it work, make a service work. So in this case, it's the grid operator, it's you as a consumer, the battery, the manufacturer of the battery control system who needs to know what that format is so it can ramp up and down its energy storage, and it's the factory and the generator down the road who want to, and there's a lot of communication that could be going on in near real time to add a lot of value and basically reduce the cost by quite a considerable amount. The challenge is right now, because doesn't exist, is it's very bespoke. You can kind of do all this sort of stuff if you set up very bespoke arrangements and you get some data from here, you put some metering in here, and you pull it all together. It's quite expensive, and some of the benefits are very, very little because of all the additional complexities and bespoke arrangements. And some things are just not possible right now, like the grid operators they're doing sort of innovation projects in this area, but they don't have a sort of controlled ability to make it scale, basically. There are some places where it does work, and an interesting one, which is a company in the US company called Opower, you may have heard of. This is the type of service that they provide. Again, they're a third-party service that partner with utility companies, and it's basically showing you your energy consumption compared to your neighbours or other types of buildings which are similar as yours, maybe similar size or number, your children are the same age. And this is competition element of actually I'm the only one in this neighbourhood who's using twice as much energy as everyone else. That's embarrassing. So I'm going to reduce my demand. And what they've found is actually an interesting thing. So if there tends to, in this competitive process, there tends to be a sort of averaging out in the middle. So some people who are using less energy than everyone else actually start to use more. But in general, because those are few and far between, so actually in total, like I think Opower have said they've turned the equivalent of not building like a dozen power stations since they launched 7 years ago. So, I mean, that's a neat example, and again, that there needs to be more companies, especially in the UK and Europe, that can give this sort of access to customers, and it's just difficult because you need to get these bespoke partnership arrangements with licensed suppliers. Each supplier, each region, you need to, globally, you need to do it, rather than, if you're developing an app to go on an app store, you build it once, you put it on an app store, it's done. That's where we need to get to in terms of, on a service provider, creating these interesting applications. It needs to be just as simple as developing an app and putting it on an app store. This system requires two things to work, in my opinion. First of all, the grid needs to be able to accommodate sort of bidirectional flows of power, and it needs this sort of standardized format of sharing data, and some of this data should be closed for security concerns, some of it should be open. Create an open marketplace. Someone can find out what's the best price to ramp up their energy storage by looking at all the different prices, and where am I going to invest in providing grid backup, looking at the country and actually here are the areas where there's so much congestion. I'm going to invest in this area because I get a better return. There's this ability for the grid to interoperate with people's actions and choices is the first thing. And the second thing is a secure peer-to-peer transaction and trading protocol. This is, I guess, where we will probably want to eventually evolve our service. But this idea, I mean, the ability for using decentralized ledgers, for example, for recording transactions. We all know about sort of things like bitcoins and things like that, but it's a bit of a scare word, I guess, at the moment. But there's a lot of innovation around the way that micropayments are processed in a peer-to-peer way. That whole layer of innovation, again, could really shake up the industry and ultimately deliver lower cost, more efficient systems.
My last question.
Yeah.
If a young person, a young student, today wants to enter the energy sector, what's your one word of advice you'd give them?
Study computer science, because energy will be a subset of the internet and data, and not the other way around.
Perfect. Thanks.
Thank you.